Your DNA of the company is all sales led.
Yeah.
Your product is sales led. Provisioning is sales led. Onboarding is, customer success team is doing the onboarding.
Right.
Then in that case, product led motions, even though you can retrofit it and you might have the money, it's going to actually fail. So do the other way around. So my recommendation would be founder led. Get some wins, get a good feeling about it. Enable your product for product led growth. So that even the founders can say, hey, you know what? Hey, customers, you can actually sign up to the product directly and let me walk you through. Right? And then over time, as the product-led growth motion becomes bigger, spend some marketing efforts to make it known, so that you can drive up the signups.
Yeah.
Right. And then as you're getting more and more customers, people who are actually signing up and staying within the product have the highest intent to use the product, rather than someone who's coming to your website and going and browsing your homepage or pricing pages.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today we're delighted to have Gururaj Pandurangi on the program. He's a serial entrepreneur, cloud security veteran, over 2 decades of experience across cloud, cybersecurity, B2B SaaS. After building and exiting 2 product startups and a cloud consulting company, Gururaj is now on a mission to transform the way SaaS companies drive growth through self-service with his new venture ThriveStack. Leveraging his deep expertise in cloud and security, he's tackling the complexities of product-led growth to make it more accessible and efficient for today's B2B software companies. So we're excited to talk to him today. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you, Brian. That's a very dominant way to introduce. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
It's funny. I used to have the guests introduce themselves, and I was like, you know what? I should just do it myself. I don't know why I was doing that before, but if anybody's been listening to all the old podcasts, you'll hear that. But anyway,
you did much better than what I could.
Yeah, I'd love to, start at the beginning. Tell us about your career journey, how you became an engineer, what prompted that, and then an eventual entrepreneur.
Going across my career span, so about 25 years in the industry now. Almost half of that I've spent as an employee working with large corporations, mostly building version 1 products at Microsoft, Bing, early versions of Azure, Microsoft Dynamics, Microsoft CRM, Windows Live Storage, Passport, so many of them at Microsoft. I built a few products at Oracle and a couple of other tech firms there as well. In 2012, I decided to skip over the employee path, which I was enjoying it, but my wife was not. I was spending about 75 hours a week, and we just had a baby, and she's like, hey, you need to take some time off. And I made a decision to go and work at a startup, not necessarily build a startup, but then I liked the idea of working at a startup, and I eventually spent almost the same amount of time in startups as well. So I built 3 startups, 2 product companies. Thankfully, both of them got acquired, and we were not thinking about selling or getting acquired, but they did. And then I'm now building a 3rd startup. So it's a wonderful journey, and I've been enjoying it, every bit of it.
Yeah, what an amazing journey. I'd love to unpack the acquisition offer. How does that conversation occur? Because you're sitting there, you're cranking your plan, building stuff that people want, selling it to people, growing your startup, right? You got hiring plans, you got your team in place, and then the phone call comes in. Tell us about like the first time that happened and what you learned and how it happened the second time.
Yeah, so my first product was, the company was called Avid, and we were into disaster recovery or backup and restore, primarily. And that space was new. We were focusing on backing up from data centers and recovering or restoring it on the cloud. AWS was our primary partner of record, and we built a baseline POC, if you will. Click and select all the virtual machines on your data center, and then push it and rebuild all the networks, take all the storages, and then take all the data. So essentially, that's what we built. And we didn't even have a product. We were at a meetup here in Seattle, and Seattle at that time was a cloud capital. So we had,
still kind of is, right?
It still is,
yeah.
But the amount of activity is now moved over to San Francisco, like building the SaaS applications and and the AI things. But at that time, cloud was very, very big. There were meetups happening practically every day, every night.
What year was this?
This is 2011, 2012. Azure was not there yet. Azure did not even have virtual machines. Azure only had like web apps. And so AWS was the primary, company in town at that time. So we built a POC and we showed it at a meetup. We didn't even have a product. And we talked about what if, we had this ability. And there were almost a jam-packed session, 100 plus people attending that. And that used to be normal. 100, 150 odd folks, constantly attending and learning from various experts out there. In one of those sessions, we talked about, we did some mocks and then we click. What if this happens? Wouldn't that be wonderful? So the whole presentation of that is, what are the challenges of doing something of that sort? And we talked about it. There was a solution architect of Accenture who attended one of those meetups. And then, they came up to us with a small team, the next day and said, hey, we attended. We have several clients who have data centers and they're trying to migrate to the cloud. Could your product be helpful? And we didn't even have a product. We just had a mock. And then we said, well, we are building it and it will take, the first portion of it will be ready in about a month and a half, and we can engage. And they essentially persuaded us to sit down with their customer. And we actually sat down with the customer. So we essentially built the product along with a partner and a customer together. Right? So, and then we got delayed by about 2.5 months to go build, a basic version of it. But we actually had the insights coming from the partners and the customer. One thing led to the other. Accenture gave us that deal, and it was a small deal. It was hardly about 30 or 40 virtual machines, but that was a land deal for them. And they then used it for 600, 700 virtual machines and then migrated over to the cloud. It worked almost 50% of the time, but that was still a big advantage to them and if they had to do this manually. Over time, we had more and more such requests from Avanar, from Infosys, from Wipro, from HCL. And then we had no idea on why are we not talking to the customers directly? Why are partners coming in? And then we realized that the space that we are in, the backup and recovery, was mostly done by the partners at that time. I thought we'll go directly to the customers and we might be able to win substantial deals. But partner-led growth is the first time I understood. So we got an acquisition offer from a set of investors when we were just about to raise capital. We almost spent nothing on the product on our own. Customers were paying us, partners were paying us. So we got the offer and then we said no. And then we got another offer from another set of investors and we actually talked to each one of them saying, hey, both of you have the needs. So we'll let you guys decide it. If you want us, we can connect the two of you. And they came together and they made a substantial offer that we could not refuse. So we took it.
So investors were these private equity guys then, or?
They were private equity guys, but they were essentially investing in like 3 or 4 such companies who wanted to build entire cloud portfolio. Products for doing cloud backup was just one of the use cases, but they were doing so many other things. So that was good. And then the deal was such that they take our IP, but not our people, and they'll go build their own team. We give them the code base, and then all our customers would be theirs. But then we get some recurring revenue for the next 2.5 years, plus a large cash deal. The next day after the acquisition, we were like, now what do we do? We're getting revenue. We're getting revenue on a monthly basis, and there are some deals which were annual basis. For the next 2 years, we had some revenue coming in all the time. So 3 of us, we sat down together and said, hey, you know what? We are cloud guys. Why don't we go ahead and consult? And let's try to understand what's the next big problem out there to solve. And then I built up a consulting tech, not even a company. And then, Accenture had a conversation with us and they're like, hey, there are these companies, could you help us do some backup and recovery, consulting to them. So we went to them. The customer had a completely different idea about what Accenture could potentially do. And they said, we want to rebuild everything into the cloud, not necessarily just take the virtual machines. But now that we know that's possible, we want to rebuild everything in the cloud and make it a lot more cloud efficient. We want to be secure, compliant, cost optimal, a whole bunch of things. And the client was T-Mobile. And so we spent some time with T-Mobile, and then T-Mobile told us that, can you guys be separate out from Accenture? And you come on our side, and then we'll help you work with AWS and Azure and all of them. Instead of you working at Accenture, you come with us. And then at that time, we floated the consulting company. We didn't even have a so we floated the company. T-Mobile took us to their internal teams. So they had about 7 or 8 teams who were trying to rebuild everything onto the cloud. And then we actually did the architecture for them, did all the DevOps, DevSecOps practices. And then a year and a half later, we had actually won Safeway, Nordstrom, a couple of these customers who were trying to go to the cloud. Right? So, or Small team of about 4 or 5 people essentially became about 75, 80 odd folks in about a year's time. And the challenge there was scaling because there was not much talent out there in the market. So we had to go bring in people who were either systems engineer or someone like that, train them up, and then deploy them, and then take it forward. T-Mobile was the first one who came and told us that, hey, you built all the apps, it's working fine. We want to take it to production and we want to secure it, but we want to do it in a not in a manual way. We want to automate it. So here's $2.5 to $3 million. Go build automated security and automatically fix the issues as well. And in about 3 months' time, we have KPMG coming in to do an audit, and that audit should pass. Right? They want to get PCI DSS audit coming in from that. So we spent some time to understand what could we automate.
Yeah.
We went up to the CIO and told them that why don't we, instead of you giving us about $3 million, you give us half for the consulting, and the other half we actually build a product and license it to you. And they said no, we want if we do that,
we want the IP. Yeah,
not just the IP. They didn't care about the IP. Like, they were more interested about the time. If you were to float a company now, it's going to take about 9 to 12 months for you to go build that product. I need to make it production ready in about 4 to 5 months time. Right. So it was the time that was more important for them, not so much as the IP. So we said, well, we'll automate in such a way that in the future, we can go build a product. Nordstrom at the same time had a very similar request. Nordstrom was on Azure, T-Mobile was on AWS. And then we thought, hey, this is recurring. Why don't we actually go build SaaS product, multi-tenant SaaS product? And maybe T-Mobile and Nordstrom may not be our first customers, but at least we now have product that we could use it in the future. Microsoft came along and they said, we'll love to invest. So they invested, they gave us free Azure, free Office 365, free whole bunch of things.
So M12 invested then?
M12, they did a baseline seed investment. More important than that money, we didn't actually get to spend that money. They took us to customers, some big customers, small customers in the healthcare space, in the financial services space. So our customers started paying through Microsoft. So again, Microsoft became a partner. But we had to go on Azure Marketplace to be able to go sell through the offer. And we had an amazing experience through that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
what year was that?
This is 2018, 2019.
Okay.
2019.
Yeah. I think that's when we originally crossed paths because I was running the Azure Marketplace team at that time.
Nothing actually came from the Marketplace, but Marketplace was, maybe a beacon for their sales team to be able to say, hey, their product is now ready, right?
Right.
There was no real transactions that came from Marketplace, but their sales team would go and sell it to them, and they would give us the offer, and we will then charge back through either private offers or something of that sort through Azure Marketplace. It was a tedious experience. There was no real private offer.
It was early days. Yeah, it was early days back then. Yeah.
Yeah. But one thing led to other. Gartner noticed us. Gartner put us into an analyst report that, hey, this is a new space called CSPM. And we didn't even know that word existed or that term existed.
Cloud for the audience. Yeah, what is that?
Cloud Security Posture Management, CSPM. And they put us in the top 15 odd companies out there who's doing CSPM. But they also gave us some glowing reviews, as in the Cloud Niti had the most coverage. They don't do just the clouds, they also do Microsoft 365. So we started getting a lot of customers just because of that.
Yeah, because enterprises are basically using Gartner and Forrester to decide.
That's right.
Who should I talk to, right?
Yeah.
What is that calculation, you think, if you're putting yourself in your customer's shoes of like, okay, I have 15 companies here to look at. How do I decide which of the 15 to talk to? Obviously, you're going to talk to the leader, whoever that is. And then you're obviously not a leader because you're a brand new company or startup. But if you read the doc, there's some glowing reviews you mentioned.
Yeah. So I think it was not a magic quadrant. The report that we got placed in was, hey, this is new in the industry. And these are vendors who are innovating in the cloud security space. Even the whole cloud security automation was new. Much of that was building products onto the cloud, but automating security was a completely new ballgame at that time. The way that it worked for us is, none of the, customers directly called us. They used to talk to Gartner, and then Gartner would say, hey, if you're doing Microsoft 365 and AWS and Azure, go to Cloud Niti, right? If you're doing just AWS and you want, just a broad-based one, go to, this other company like Redlock or wherever it is, right? So that's how Gartner became a more or less a sieve, a funnel for us. And the customer would connect with the analyst and then drop us a note, directly to me most of the times.
Yeah.
And hey, we've talked to Gartner and they told us great things. Could you schedule us, or could we fly you in to demo your product to this audience? So
Gartner
sometimes
wanted to do that.
No, not Gartner. The customer themselves
Oh.
would. And we found out in a very weird way that the CIOs or the CTOs would call us, but they were actually not the buyers. They wanted to make sure that their products that they're building are secure and compliant. The buyer would have been either the CIO or a security organization, which would be sitting like a CISO organization, which sits on the side of a CTO. So the CTO would be a champion. They would bring us in, and they'll say, hey, the product is easy to work with, but we need the buy-in of the CISO because that they have the budget. So we would go fly in, to customers. We would do a half a day workshop. Some of that will be with Microsoft, sometimes with AWS together. And then we will walk them through this, how it'll get done. And let's do a POC. So by the end of the workshop itself, we would go say, hey, let's connect to one of your cloud accounts and then let's see what happens. And then and the same night, we would give them a report saying that this is your posture at this moment, and these are the things that you should go fix right now. And that helped us quite a bit. Flying in person helped us, quite a bit. But soon, we started getting a lot of offers from Palo Alto Networks, from Juniper, from many of these network companies who wanted to go invest in the cloud security space.
Yeah.
And now coming back and circling back to your original question, how did it feel? It felt pretty weird. We were not ready to be acquired. Neither we knew what acquisition means at such a scale. Right?
Yeah.
Our previous company was very small, like a 3-4 member company with about 6 or 7 interns. This one is slightly much bigger, about 30 odd people. So it felt weird, and we were starting to get a lot more revenue through the pipeline. Microsoft was a partner, Gartner was sending us customers. So we're like, should we sell? Should we not sell? Or should we just raise big? Thankfully, Gartner told us that, raise big because the competition is heating up. You might have to raise upwards of 25 to 50 million for you to be able to be relevant in the space, because competition is heating up very rapidly. And then our revenues were much smaller. We could not go ahead and raise like 50 million. We could potentially raise about 25, 30 million, and that's when we started getting the offers. And most of them told us that we would run it like a subsidiary. We'll make it like an investment in your company, but you'll be like, a wholly owned subsidiary. And then we said,
you're running like a separate BU basically inside the business.
BU.
Yeah.
We can bring in new customers. You can have your own, overlay sales team and a whole bunch of all of that. And then I had to go look at how does this happen? In a larger company, if you're running something like this, they might give us some milestones. How will that all work? We sat down and I said no 6 times to 4 different companies. I said, no, this won't work. We are not ready to sell. So maybe talk to us in about a year or 2. But then Zscaler persisted. And then they assured us that this will be run like a subsidiary where we get to build the product in our own way. They won't influence us through that, but they will actually get us more customers, and they will make a substantial investment even beyond the acquisition to make it. And that's when we said, yeah, why don't we try this out?
It's an amazing story. And, one of the things that struck me is you're talking to some pretty big names, some big corporates, enterprise customers pretty early on at both the companies. And you mentioned in passing that like, oh, we went to a meetup, we happened to run into somebody there that had this problem at, one of these companies. For the founders that are listening and they're like, wow, that's an amazing journey. How do I get access to these enterprise customers? You've done it multiple times. What would you say to them? Like, how do you go talk to Nordstrom's and T-Mobile and Microsoft and Accenture and all these big enterprise customers and partners?
Yeah, in our case, it was pretty weird. Our first product, backup and disaster recovery, we had a partner, and the partner would essentially at that time had contracts with their customers to either migrate or build things in the cloud. And they were in need and they were looking for solutions. And we got in with the partner, not so much as the customer. And the partner would take us to the customers. It will be, initially 3-4 months. It felt like a waste of time. They would take us to some large company. We felt, hey, you know what? We are in front of, some real big wigs, and this could be a large contract. And then we'll go back after that. And we felt very good. and nothing would happen. And 3, 4, 5, 10 such things that happened. And then we cracked one together. I was feeling a lot more disillusioned at that time. Like, hey, instead of working with partners, why don't we go directly talk to customers? But then, I did not know how to go build an enterprise sales team. Right. So my disadvantage, of not knowing how to build an enterprise sales team, actually became an advantage where I relied a lot more on the partners. And then I said, well, why not just work with a lot more partners? And if I work with, because cloud is partner-led most of the time. So why don't we work with more and more partners? In the cloud security space, we actually built a small sales team, hardly about 3 or 4 member team. And our deal size by going directly to them was much smaller. Even though we would go talk to larger companies, the better way that I thought we were winning deals is either working with Microsoft or working with AWS. And when we go jointly with them, we were winning larger deals. In fact, it happened that we went to one of the financial services companies in Europe, and Microsoft took us there. And we had actually talked to the CISO before, and they had ignored us. When Microsoft took us there, our deal size or proposal to the CISO before we talked to Microsoft was 25K.
And a CISO is what for the audience?
CISO is the Cloud Information Security Officer, someone who's at the helm of affairs on the the security or information security space. So we talked to the CISO, and we had given them an offer of 25K, for the first year. And we say, well, and these are some of the credits. If you exhaust that, we'll look at it 6 months later. They completely ignored us. One of their network engineers, one of the cloud security engineers came in, tried our product, and then did not even finish the setup and walked away. Microsoft took us to them, and then they gave us assurance. They gave the CISO and their cloud security team an assurance that, hey, we are deploying this at scale. And they essentially said it's a FOMO. You come in now, you get this, and they put an offer of 123K. Right. And that was more than 100K, or almost about 100K more than what we had put an offer. And they took it. And we got deployed in almost a week and a half time after we signed that deal. So I don't know the answer.
What's the lesson there is like working with a partner working through a partner helps you land bigger deals with the execs. Is that kind of the takeaway there from that story?
I think cloud providers and their marketplaces have a different advantage than working with, let's say, an MSP or an SI, partner like Accenture.
Which are what for the audience? MSPs and SIs?
Managed service providers. These are companies who take a managed deal. Let's say they would run your backup operations or DevOps operations or your site reliability operations for.
So instead of just going directly to Azure and buying their service, you could pay this MSP it's kind of like a VAR, kind of value added reseller.
Correct.
They package up service and security and implementation, and
they would package up, all of that. Tooling, consulting, reporting, and fixing. There are many of these MSPs. They're called as MSSPs, Managed Security Service Providers. So don't differentiate themselves.
Yeah, the cloud, enterprise, and cloud have so many acronyms.
I know it's all done by Gartner. But the learning is that if we go with these third-party providers like MSPs, the return is not that substantial. But if you work with cloud providers themselves, hyper cloud providers, Azure, AWS primarily, and maybe to some extent GCP these days, and your product appeals to that particular audience, essentially you sell through them. And this is more analogous to me in this particular way. If you're a B2C customer and you buy an Apple phone, Apple Store is your marketplace. So you buy products through that. If you don't have your app on the App Store, it's very unlikely that the end user will actually go purchase it from there, right? Same is the case with the cloud providers. Typically, cloud providers will essentially say that, hey, for backup and recovery or this and that, there are these partners, and that also gives advertisements to the customer that, hey, there are these standard products, we can go try them from their marketplace.
They're deployable and purchasable through the marketplace. Yeah. So we know that they function, they're secure. There's some other benefits like combined billing, so I can get billed right on my Azure bill and things like that.
Right. So I don't have to pay to them. I don't have to sign an SLA or SaaS agreement. I'm already have a quota with Azure or AWS. I'll rather pay through that. And use the same service agreements with them. So that gives them an upper hand in the purchase deal, right? They can negotiate with us as a vendor, but they essentially pay Azure and AWS, and we get a small, they take a small cut and then, give us the rest of it. That actually helps us in reducing the time to sale. rather than anything else.
Right. Because instead of saying, coming in cold, you can say, hey, it's already there. You can just go deploy it.
You can go deploy. We've seen the other way around as well. So someone who's trying to come directly work with us, now they need, a DPA, a data processing agreement. They need a SaaS agreement. They need, very specific SLAs. They need 99.99% availability.
Yeah, it gets mucked up in the procurement process where they have all these things they want you to sign and all these contracts, and
avoid all of that by going through this, right? So that makes it a lot more easier.
Kind of out of all of this motion over the first two companies you had, somewhere along the way, ThriveStack, this PLG, product-led growth mindset occurs, like this epiphany. Tell us about kind of when did ThriveStack start kind of percolating in your mind?
Yeah. So in 2020, after we got acquired by Zscaler, Zscaler was a 100% sales-led company. COVID had hit, and our sales team was not able to reach to, or at least in-person conversations. And the team had motions of, we'll do in-person events of 50, 60 odd customers, and then be able to walk them through, this is the problem, this is the solution, do you want to go try this out? That stopped. Right. And then there were more one-on-one conversations. So in 2021, we were still winning some great deals. Before acquisition, our average, deal sizes were 35 to 50K, in a ballpark. Some were slightly bigger, of course, a lot more smaller. But after the acquisition, our deal sizes, jumped up. The sales team would not even pick deal sizes which is 30, 35K and less. So they will actually say no to them. So they will, they will only go to some larger deal sizes.
Why is that? It just wasn't worth their time, or
it wasn't worth the time.
Yeah.
So they would rather go and get to their 1.5 million, 2 million yearly quota, through just 10
with one deal.
Yeah, or sometimes one or two deals, rather than going after like hundreds of small deals. So they would usually go say no to smaller deals. And what happened as a consequence of that is we kept a gap in the market, and there were smaller upstarts who came in with self-serve motions, and companies would go ahead and, because nobody was talking to anyone at that time in COVID time, the customers would come sign up to various of our competitor products. They like it, and they would buy small, $100, $200 a month to get started. And in 3 to 6 months time, they will go $1,000, $5,000 a month, and that was okay. In our case, we were not even enabled for self-serve growth, and our sales team were only selling upwards of 30, 35K, ACVs. There was a quarter, actually about 4 to 5 months, when 17 or 18 customers that we thought we could have closed much earlier if we had a self-serve motion, all of them, we had lost them. We had lost them to upstarts. And our sales team essentially say that, hey, if we had a self-serve motion, they could have sent it to them, and then they could have ignored the quota on them, but at least they would have the customer, and they were okay to do the expansion deal rather than an acquisition deal with a smaller land deal. And that hit us very hard. So we essentially spent about $1 million to rebuild or retrofit self-serve into the product. Think of it like end users are able to go sign up and try, and if they like it, they don't even have to talk to someone. They essentially do an in-app, purchase, very similar to the B2C motion.
That cost $1 million to retrofit at that point.
Yeah, because our product was massive. We had about 5 modules. We had acquired, an Israeli startup at that time, and their product was also ingrained into that one. And we had already built so many other.
All the OAuth and all the handoffs and the billing and the provisioning and just re-architecting 5 different apps to do all that.
5 different modules.
Yeah.
And each of them had their own setup. Each of them had their own provisioning. Each of them had their own billing, right? And it was easier for a sales guy to say, hey, here's the calculator, customer, what do you want?
Yeah.
And then here's an yearly.
And then we'll just go manually provision it for you. Yeah.
Correct. Rather than doing a self-serve motion. And our self-serve motion essentially sucked because we enable the self-serve sign up and try, but we could not convert anyone directly. Our product was so damn heavy that we had to change a lot of onboarding, keep it extremely
simple. You have to rethink the user flows, right?
Right.
So instead of like, hey, I've done all the sales up front, you've signed this 6-7 figure contract.
Yeah.
Now I'm provisioning and onboarding you and training you.
Yeah.
You're dropping somebody in there that has no context.
We had to simplify the onboarding. We had to make sure that the documentation is up there. It's not a separate documentation website. It's, inbuilt within the product itself. There are nudges, there are things when they don't set up, the product itself automatically sends them a notification that, hey, yesterday you were trying something like this and you stopped here, here's some video or something to. So we had to go redo all of that, and we couldn't do this in time.
And in hindsight, like looking back now, and I'm kind of jumping to the end a little bit, but I think it's a good point to ask the question, which is, knowing what you know now, if you could go back and do it over again, would you have gone PLG from 0 to 1? And why or why not? And how does the founder know why or why not?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, PLG or product-led growth motion, it's a GTM motion. My advice to founders there is that you shouldn't think of GTM motion unless until you have a product that customers really want. So first build the product, at least a baseline product that that's relevant to the customers, that the customers really want it, right?
Yeah.
So win some deals, get some customers.
Go actually do the founder-led sales, get out there, try to sell the thing, land some deals, have people using it, not canceling, not churning, find some product market fit.
Not even product market fit, at least understand that, hey, if you do this in a repeated way, you'll be able to go to get that baseline feeling. You may not necessarily have to go close, let's say 30, 40 deals. Typically, you'll say almost $1 million of revenue. Because if you're going $1 million of revenue and you're a venture-led company at that time, the VCs are pushing you, hey, you know what, this GTM motion is working, double down on that, right? So that becomes like a sales-led approach at that time. So the founders will really have to think that, hey, I'm now about 50K, 100K. If I want to enable both product-led growth and sales-led growth, because you'll need both, right? So you have to break your product in with self-serve motions first.
Yeah.
And you enable that, and then you can allow, sales-led as a layer on top of that product-led, right? Purely for expansion. But if you do the other way around, if you completely enable sales-led growth, it'll be the failure that I witnessed, right? Your now DNA of the company is all sales-led.
Yeah.
The product is sales-led. Provisioning is sales-led. Onboarding is, customer success team is doing the onboarding.
Right.
Then in that case, product-led motions, even though you can retrofit it and you might have the money, it's going to actually fail. So go the other way around. So my recommendation would be founder-led, get some wins, get a good feeling about it, enable your product for product-led growth so that even the founders can say, hey, you know what? Hey, customers, you can actually sign up to the product directly and let me walk you through. And then over time, as the product-led growth motion becomes bigger, spend some marketing efforts to make it known, so that you can drive up the signups. And then as you're getting more and more customers, people who are actually signing up and staying within the product have the highest intent to use the product, rather than someone who's coming to your website and going and browsing your homepage or pricing pages. Those are just visitors, right? So those would be the lowest intent. So isn't it easier to convert the highest intent buyers? Isn't it easier to convert or upsell to the highest intent buyers than to just do a spray and pray, right? So which is why founder-led, product-led, sales-led for expansion.
What are some ACVs and ARRs kind of rules of thumb for those 3 stages?
Founder-led, most founders in the beginning are very conservative. So they would go less than 10K a year, right? In even B2B SaaS companies that I've seen, most deals are about 10K, 20K max a year. With product-led, you'll have to fine-tune it, and you might have to find either a free trial offering or some kind of an offering, which is a land deal.
Like a freemium or a free trial.
Right.
Yeah.
And typically these might convert in almost about 2 to 4 weeks time. And would you be happy to have a lowest touch conversion that's happening on a month-on-month basis, right? Which is typically referred as the effortless ARR. What if that deal is $100, $200 a month to begin with? And if you know the customer journey, they will start with $100 offer, and then they can actually come to maybe $1,000 or 20, 30, 40K a year in about 6 months time. If you build your product in such a way that it can scale for the small and medium buyers to mid-scale buyers and enterprise buyers at the same time, it actually works wonders. So you can build a pipeline through product-led growth, and you can actually have the revenue through the sales-led motions from the same pipeline.
And then you start founder-led, you're selling these 5, 10, 20,000 contracts manually, founder-led sales. And then at some point after, it sounds like 5, 10, 20 sales, you go back and you redo your offering to do PLG to allow some of the website visitors to convert. And And you would recommend that you do both from there on. You
From there
have
on. Yeah.
you have the PLG, but you also have the sales.
Correct. And that's the one that actually scales well. If you go completely sales led, it does scale well, but it's linear. The more salespeople that you deploy would be, your growth, which means that you will actually have to go borrow a lot more money from the market, to go sell bigger and bigger. And that's what happens over a period of time. More and more venture-backed companies will borrow money from VCs, right?
You prefer the term invest?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily invest. I mean, it's essentially
it's basically a loan for future equity. I mean, more or less, right?
Yeah. And then, you're growing pretty small at that time because your customer acquisition cost, your efficiency is about 20 to 30% of the investments in sales and marketing at that time.
Yeah.
Right? Which means for every dollar you spend, you're getting about 25 cents or 30 cents, on a yearly basis. Agreed. The next
Which is not very good efficiency. If I'm a VC looking at that, I'm looking for capital efficiency. Ideally, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. You put $1 million into sales and marketing, you get $1 million out. That's pretty good efficiency, especially with the B2B SaaS products, right? High margin, 80%, 90% on the margin for the end customer.
And that's exactly the problem, right? So
yeah,
with sales-led growth, approach, yes, it is a linear growth, but the efficiency is horrible, right? 20, 30% is pretty normal these days. If you get to 40 or 50%, you are abnormally great, right? VCs will love you towards that, which means you take in $5 million of investment. I'm just throwing a number, and you're making about $1.5 million a year. That's great, which is why, the valuations keep going up. But that's not a sustainable business, right? You will have to figure out a way to acquire customers at a lower, CAC or customer acquisition cost. And that can only happen if it is a lot more self-servable. If your product is self-servable and your conversion is also self-servable.
Right. And so you switch to PLG, but you don't stop the sales and marketing enterprise sales kind of push. You're doing both in parallel is what you would say.
You do both in parallel. So I can imagine the following. Customer acquisitions are faster, cheaper, and and in a larger quantity if it is self-serve, right? So you can imagine 1,000 signups a day, 1,000 signups a month is typical for a B2B SaaS companies. If your product is relevant, you put in some marketing effort. Sure enough, it may not be as big as the sales and marketing to drive up the acquisition cost, and that can be a lot more automated. But then on the other end of the spectrum, on the other end of the funnel, imagine this: that 1,000 signups are happening per month, of which maybe 40 or 50 of them will get converted at, let's say, less than 5K a year. That's still good. Of those, take about 15-20% of them, which will actually expand with sales-led motion. And that can be a massively large ACV. They don't even have to go through the RFP process. They don't have to necessarily go through the procurement dilemma because it's already been deployed. People are actually using it. People have already paid for it. It's just an expansion play at that time.
So tell us about where ThriveStack kind of fits into this stack.
So ThriveStack, and we named it as such because it's Thrive is better than grow. Thrive is you're thriving, you're happy.
Sorry, we're Team Ignite, not Team Grow. So yeah.
So we built a stack, of things that allows, both these motions to happen simultaneously. Essentially start with product-led acquisition. Why couldn't you acquire a customer on a self-serve basis? So we built all of the elements that are needed for the buyer to be able to go self-discover the value, sign up, and try your product, which essentially means that authentication is enabled. Trial plans are automatically enabled. We'll automatically do a lookup of who this particular user is, who potentially could be the economic buyer, which company they work for, all of that ICP at the time of the sign up itself. And we automatically create the telemetry of who's using your product. That's the problem that most times you'll get when signups are coming in, what are they using? Who are these companies? Have they finished the setup or not? Are they stuck? Are they dropping off? So we have built the second product that comes along with it is the product-led growth analytics. That gives you all the acquisition metrics, retention metrics, which allow the SaaS companies to understand someone who has signed up, a week ago, are they coming back at all or not? If they're not coming back, at what point they dropped off, which are the activation metrics and the activation report. We also give the signals associated to it, saying that, hey, now they have completed so much and they are either about to churn or they are struggling accounts, or they are some really big account, they're like a big fish or whale, deploy your sales team. So we give you the signals to the sales team to go reach out to them or engage them or bring them back to the table to use the product, right? So we give all these three: the self-serve enablement, the data analytics, for PLG, and the signals to upsell, to convert, or to re-engage.
You're basically, I love this origin story, because you're basically solving this $1 million problem that you had at Zscaler.
Yeah.
Right? We have, like, how do we do all this? It's expensive and painful. Yep. And there should just be a platform that just helps SaaS companies do this.
That's the origins of it. So, we spent some time, actually, AWS helped us quite a bit. We spent some time with the AWS Activate program startups. They have about, I did not realize it, they have about 50,000 odd startups all around the world.
Yeah.
And they gave us access to about 150 or 200 of them. And we spent some time on, if you were to build product-led growth and a sales-led growth motion together, how would you do it, right? What tools do you currently use? And we realized that it's a very complex thing. Typically, everyone is spending about $1 million to $1.5 million to build product-led growth and then layer SLG on top of it. And they cannot do this unless until they take in large capital investments.
Yeah. So is your target then basically kind of seed and Series A SaaS startups?
At this moment, yes.
Yeah. It's kind of like you've now found something that people want to pay for, and now you're trying to systematize how you scale it.
Correct. We are getting a lot more interest from accelerators, incubators, studios who have like 15, 20, 30 odd companies who all want to go ahead and, at a very fast take, want to enable self-serve motion for them. And that's how we are starting to do a lot more onboarding like that.
Yeah.
Hey, get your 5-10 companies, we'll onboard them all in a span of like 2 to 3 days time. And they will now have a basic self-serve. They will have the analytics on who's using the product. And then once you cross this particular barrier, you start paying us.
Right.
But you don't have to pay us right now.
Interesting. So part of your go-to-market is the PLG motion inside of a PLG platform. So it's kind of like, come use it. And it sounds like there's a freemium offering.
We have a starter plan, a freemium offering, where, because it takes time for people to understand what do you get from it, right? Even though the setup is easy, it usually takes anywhere between half an hour to about 2 hours time, average time for a dinner. So you do the setup, but you get so much from it. Now it takes more time to understand what have you gotten. So we have various bells and whistles for some large companies now who's using our product for prevention of abuse. And so they're getting a lot more signups coming in from bots, a lot more malicious
shared logins, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So we automatically prevent them. So we just have flips that, hey, here's a switch to enable that, here's a switch to disable it. But now they have to understand that, hey, these are the things that are possible, and that takes some time.
What is usually the technical implementation of something like ThriveStack into somebody's existing stack? What does that implementation look like? Like, who's usually doing it? How hard is it?
Yeah,
things like that.
So typically for a seed stage or a Series A company, most of the time our primary person that we interact with is the founders. So the founders are the one who are deeply interested to enable product-led growth motion. They will then bring in their development team and their sales team, and then we become the data to connect the two of them. So the way that the deployment works is we have some JavaScripts that go sit within their product itself. We have a sidecar set of APIs and things like that, where we automatically block and take control of the user who's signing up, right, all the way till enabling trial. And then once we do this baseline orchestration, we hand that control back to them, saying that, hey, now that you're a legitimate user, you've done the basic, all the checks, you're not abusing the system, we'll then redirect them to the onboarding pages or whichever pages as appropriate. And then we have various APIs for all the telemetry. So the good thing about what we have built is if you enable a self-serve motion, the data is automatic. You don't have to really go and take a data warehouse and write an API or start dumping all the data. All the signups and the logins and the use, we automatically know that because we are in the rightful path, and we automatically enable that telemetry. So that onboarding, even though it takes about an hour or two, what we have started hearing from the market is it somehow replaces about 15 odd tools that the SaaS companies would have actually used it. to stitch all of them together. So the analytics portion of it, that's a separate set of tool sets. Growth analytics is a separate tool set. The product analytics is a separate tool set. Indication is its own product. Authorization is its own product out there in the market. Trial management, account management, enrichment, signals. This, if you look at the entire spectrum, it's about like 15 to 18 odd different categories of tools. Within each category, there's at least about like 40 or 50 odd tools available in the market. So we essentially crash it down, just use ThriveStack.
Bundle it all back together.
Bundle it all together, and then
because all these tools exist. I mean, a founder technically looking at ThriveStack could just go, I'll just kind of go hack it all together myself. Yeah. But yeah, to your point, by the time you do all that and you pay for all these services, or you fork them all off GitHub, or use all the open source things that exist, it's hard to maintain and deploy and be compliant. And it's better just to be like, okay, this is undifferentiated work that I'm hacking together, this solution that I could just pay for something like ThriveStack. Yeah.
And that's what we hear. So the ROI for this is actually pretty fast, with the amount it takes to have your dinner. And that's the running joke that we currently have. You have now reduced from 15 tools to 1. You have, reduced the amount of spend that you'll have on the tools, the amount of people that you'll have to deploy to stitch all of them together. And then you will have to have the know-how on when to do what else beyond the basics, right?
Yeah.
So we not only give you, and many of the times we essentially replace, we've actually filled various gaps that did not exist, with a specific tool sets in the market. So we had to go fill in the gaps. For most part of it, like, hey, authentication is a standard play. We don't have to go build the authentication. Here's here's Auth0, here's somebody else. Do you want to use Auth0? By default, it's Auth0. And then, boom, all you do is enable this, and we behind the scenes will partner with Auth0 and create a tenant for you. Do you want to send an email notification? Well, there's about like 50 odd tools available in the market. Here's a send grid, and we have automatically built out all the templates. We have built out the email.
We manage that integration,
all of that delivery and all of that.
Go hack it together yourself. Yeah, but then
So
you have to
that's the
maintain all
value.
those tools, 15 tools.
Yeah. So that's how we thought about it, and this is a lot more recent, right? So we initially started off with just the baseline self-serve play, and we thought that's good enough. And then most founders came back and say, hey, you've just enabled the engineering team. My growth team needs data, right? I need to know, I'm running blind of who these self-serve users are, which accounts are. So we built the data.
I need to know. I'm the demand gen team, and I need to know who's using it, so I can figure out what are the MQLs to go over to sales, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Right. And recently we have started building on these signals for expansion. And then all these self-serve users, for example, let's say if one of these accounts is GE, and GE, within the large GE, there's about 4 or 5 teams who's using your product. Wouldn't your sales team love to know that, hey, there are these 5-6 departments within GE. All of them are actually the same company, and they're using different pricing plans.
Yeah, so you're kind of bundling kind of what Gainsight did last generation, like 10 years ago.
Correct.
Right, because now you have all that first-party data in your customer's tenant, like whoever paid for ThriveStack.
Correct. And then we are able to show them that, hey, GE has about 5 tenants, and we are working on some Gen AI. So, hey, by doing something like this, you can actually go send an email, talk to your potential buyer at GE, and then essentially create a multi-year, larger ACV deal by crashing all of these tenants to a single deployable unit and through a single pricing plan. So we are now starting to get a lot more over there, and we are building out various pieces to enable that.
Well, this is amazing. I could talk to you for another hour about all this stuff because I nerd out on this stuff. But where can these seed and Series A companies listening to this find you online?
So we are generally a lot more on LinkedIn, but our website is www.thrivestack.ai. That's THRIVE stack.ai, and we'll put that in the show notes probably. You can find it on my LinkedIn, on my Twitter. Most of the times I'm live and kicking on LinkedIn. So you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.